Today, our friend Ash joins us for a story. Hey guys, I'm Leila. So today I have quite a treat for you. We have Ash joining us. What's going on, Ash?
Leila, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing this picture above me that's disturbing.
So what we have going on today is, would you believe Raid actually created lore story for Harrier, Ash's favorite champ in the game? And the story is bad. Like, it's really bad, you
Just
guys.
like the champion, Leila. Just like the champion, you know?
Just like the champion. But guys, but. So what ends up happening is, like, I don't know, he ends up going into the hospital and the hospitaller takes care of him. He falls in love with her. So he breaks in the middle of the night. She whacks him over the head with something and they fall in love. And I'm like, that's a terrible story. I'm like, what is that?
Right? Yeah. It's a terrible story for a terrible champion, and
Yeah.
I didn't even know they made rare tandem champions, honestly, until Harrier, you know?
Until
yeah.
Harrier. What's a lot of fun is I have a lot of families in my community, and one of the families has a 13-year-old who's aspiring to be a novelist, and she's actually written me a bunch of stories a couple times. Her name is B. So she very graciously offered to write Ash a Harrier lore story because she knows how much Ash loves Harrier.
B, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have, B. You shouldn't have.
But it's a wonderful story. She did a really, really good job. And guys, I want to point out that she's 13 years old because this story is really, really well done. I have to say, when Ash and I discussed this story off camera, this isn't something I expected to read from a 13-year-old. You know, he and I were talking about this, and I think we both agree with that. It's very, very well done. There's things that she put into it that she knows I like. She did some stuff for him. So it's really much more in-depth than I was expecting.
Yeah, I will say, definitely watch to the end, because there's some twists and turns along the way, and I have to agree 100%. Like, when you reached out, you're like, a Harrier lore story, I was like, I don't know about this, my arch enemy, but B absolutely just killed it with this story. Very, very, very good. Incredibly impressed, way better than I could have written, certainly. So I'm excited to get to it, Leila.
Yes. All right, guys, so sit back and we're going to share the fan fiction story written by B. It is called Harrier and the Healer. During the Second Age, in the great city of St. Valentin, the Sacred Order was ruled by the noble king Lucian, who had a son named Prince Caesarion and best friend Leonis St. Cloud. An evil orc tyrant named Kodos the Unstoppable invaded the king's lands, and the king's army faltered in their first confrontation. Leonis ignored the full retreat order by the king, continuing to attack the orcs that got himself and the prince injured.
After the battle, the two were taken to St. Visario's keep in the care of the Order of Hospitallers. Leonis was called the Foolish Harrier for his reckless behavior and warned never to endanger the prince again. For days, the two would argue constantly, disturbing the wounded and routine of the Order, until a beautiful young sister named Millicent stormed in. She began chastising the two befuddled men into silence, leaving them in the dark to ponder their behavior. The prince was quite taken by her beauty and firm hand, while Leonis dismissed her as inconsequential.
Over the next weeks, the physicians explained that they would need a caretaker back at the city and suggested Millicent. Millie, as they called her, performed her duties admirably and took care of both men. The three would continue their raillery exchanges. Leonis and Millie had two opposing personalities and quarreling constantly, but opposites sometimes attract. The prince also began to spend more time with Millie, horse riding, walks in the gardens, and discussions in the Great Library.
Leonis would always watch and began to feel jealousy in their bond. He invited Millie to a social event on a pretense. An uncomfortable Millie watched on as townspeople mocked Leonis for his actions on the battlefield. She showed compassion for him, and he instinctively countered her with derision. The two began to argue outside, and their spontaneous passions got the better of them. Leonis expressed his feelings for Millie, while she pulled away, feeling manipulated. Millie rushed away as Leonis tried to stop her, feeling guilty for his actions.
The next morning, the prince and a silent Millie shared their morning stroll near the horses she loved, but her thoughts were elsewhere, trying to make sense of what had happened the night before. The prince knew she would be leaving soon and showed her a beautiful white stallion. The prince then asked her to be his queen. There stood Leonis, and the two friends began to quarrel. Millie then realized the two men had fallen in love with her. She stepped in between them, chastising them both, but this time, Leonis would expose the events from the night before.
Millie rebuffed the two men. How one selfishness could doom her to a life of infidelity and the other a life of servitude. She ran from both, hurt by their actions. The next day, the prince awoke to see Millicent leaving on a carriage, and he called to her, but she did not answer. As the prince turned, his father entered. The king left the letter on the corner of the bed and explained that she had asked to return to her sisters of St. Visario's keep. At the pub, a drunken Leonis watched the carriage leave his sight, looking down at the letter Millicent had left him.
In time, the orcs returned, and this time their target was St. Vicario's. The prince knew that Millicent and the sisters were in great danger. The prince tried to convince the king that his garrison could arrive and hold the orcs long enough for the armies to march down on them, but the king refused. Prince Caesarion rushed to the drunken Leonis, but he was too inebriated to answer. He saw Millicent's half-burnt letter next to him. The barkeep explains that the woman loved them both and would not choose between them. The prince ordered his men to prepare the horses, telling the barkeep to inform the foolish Harrier he could rot in his pitiful existence. He threw the letter into the fire and departed.
Arriving at St. Visario in the middle of the night, Prince Caesarion and his men found Millie inside and readied the defenses. Meanwhile, a groggy Leonis woke, and the barkeeper explained the prince's actions. Leonis sprang up and he rushed towards the stables. As dawn approached, the orc tyrant Kodos and his orc armies arrived and ordered the attack. The prince's brave garrison held them for hours. Kodos eventually breached the walls of St. Visario, and his orcs entered the main hall. He and the prince met in battle, and Kodos got the upper hand. Millie tried to intervene, but was thrown to the ground. As the orc lifted his axe to kill the prince, arrows broke into the hall, killing Kodos' followers.
Leonis charged Kodos, and the two battled as Millie protected the prince. The tyrant struck down Leonis as the prince and Millie shouted in dramatic defiance. Leonis crumbled to the ground, and Kodos raised his axe to end Leonis' life. The horns of the armies of the king shocked the tyrant into attention. Realizing his orc were out of position, he ordered them out of the keep and to charge the massive armies of the Sacred Order. Millie rushed to Leonis and tried to use her powers to heal him, but it was too late.
Millie cradled the dying Leonis as the saddened prince looked on. He asked her if she loved him. Millie replied that they both did. When Leonis asked why he was loved, she replied, because no one else would. "Forgive me, both of you," he said while placing his hands on Caesarion's. Leonis was gone. The king and his guard entered, with the battle won, asking what the fool was still doing there. "Saving my father," the prince said. "Our foolish Harrier saved my life."
A few years had passed, and a young toddler barely walking was playing near the Garden of Souls, followed closely by a crowned, casually dressed Millicent and a stoic, facial-haired prince. The youngling came to the marble statue and plaque in the ground that said, "Here lies the Honorable Harrier Leonis, savior of St. Valentin." Prince Caesarion placed fresh flowers on Leonis' grave. The three exited the garden as their tale of cautionary love between a foolish Harrier and a healer are forever chronicled in the Book of Legends. Okay, guys, so that was the story for Harrier written from B. And I have to say, I am so impressed. I know Ash and I were talking about this before, and he said it like perfectly. There's such good, like fun adult themes in this that actually do fit the lore story. Like, what do you think, Ash?
Yeah, I can't believe, not to belabor the point, but I can't believe this came from a 13-year-old. Like, he's drunk half the time, there's a love affair going on, there's deaths, which is my favorite part personally. I love the name Foolish Harrier, you know, rings a bell. I like it. And she really took a story that was, let's face it, no offense to whoever wrote the original lore, pretty lackluster, pretty uninteresting, and really spiced it up a lot. She did a really, really great job.
Yeah, I gotta say, and there are things that I kind of picked up on too, is again, being part of my audience, they know how much I love Lord of the Rings, and there's like this whole like orc fight, like Lord of the Rings sequence in there, which I'm like, yes. Then she kills off Harrier, which was, I know was done for Ash. That I love it.
Be my girl.
Killing off Harrier and
smart girl.
Smart kid, right? Smart kid. I thought it was so well done, guys. And I gotta say, like, I love fun things like this, like fun fan fiction that really just explore some possibilities. You know, like there was new characters added. She even gave the name Leonis, which I have a feeling kind of goes with the fact I call him Leonardo DiCaprio, so I'm sure that's got something to do with that, you know?
First of all, how dare you disgrace Leonardo DiCaprio by comparing him to stupid, foolish Harrier? First off, Leila. Second off, but I agree with you though. That's so cool how he had a regular name, you know, because Harrier is kind of a weird name anyway. So she really put a lot of thought into it. And to your point, awesome to throw those little Easter eggs in there for your audience and you know?
Yeah, I love that. I really, really do. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this story. And you know what I would love to know is if there was a champ in Raid that you would want to make a fanfiction story for, like who would you choose? Like there are so many champs in this game who don't have a story. Like for God's sake, somebody please write me a story for Cardiel and Cecilia because I love those two and they don't have a story. Like how could they not have one? Please, somebody do that. You know, like I would love to know what kind of stories would you guys want to write if you were going to write a story for a champ in Raid that doesn't have one?
I would love to see you do a Vagabond because you turned me on to the grotesque nature of that champion, you know? Like what she's got going on is very disturbing. I need to know the backstory, you know?
Oh man, that's rude. I thought we were tight. I thought we were friends. What the heck was that?
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? There's gonna be a reason she has 100 you know, baby skulls in her knapsack.
Alright guys, well thank you so much for watching this video about the story for Harrier and the Healer, and B, thank you so much for writing the story for us to share. I think it was fantastic, and as always, you know, I know Ash and I have very similar beliefs when it comes to just, you know, uplifting and supporting whatever the communities want to do, so I encourage, you know, if there's anybody else, like kids, families, anybody, just, you know, go for what it is you want to do. Like, I know that B is aspiring to be a novelist, like she wants to write, and clearly you can see that the kid has talent, like she knows what she's doing. So I would love to see what else people have, you know.
And I have to say that, like, maybe Plarium could have her make an official lore story. It's not that outlandish. She did a really good job. So second that, Leila.
Thank you guys so much for watching. And Ash, thank you for joining for the story of Harrier.
The pleasure is always mine, even on Harrier. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. Bye, guys. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.